You know, that's not my city, and the fact that they were getting all the publicity, and I'm like, my own people are hurting, and you're not even showing them, but you're really showing a lot about New Orleans. But it was interesting because if you watch those pictures from New Orleans, you were probably like me and had a lot of mixed opinions. Obviously, we were concerned about the devastation. We were bothered by the destruction, by the people that were displaced. But as I saw images on the TV screen, I saw something very significant. One thing is when a person has to literally tear a hole through the ceiling of their house to get into their attic, to then tear a hole in their roof to get on the roof just to escape floodwaters and wait for someone hopefully to come by with a boat to rescue them. That is an act of desperation. It's desperation that says, I'll do whatever I got to do to get to the highest point so I don't drown in these waters. But then you also saw images that were troubling from the downtown area because people were wading through knee-deep water, breaking into stores and stealing things that were not theirs. Now that bothered me. It's like, why would they do that? I mean, after all, that's not theirs to take. But then I got to thinking, well, if I had no water, if I had no food, and I was desperate, I might steal it. If I had a baby that didn't have any formula to drink, and that was all that baby had, and I didn't know how that baby was going to survive because I didn't know when I'd be able to get that formula again, I might break into a store and get it. Because desperation causes us to do things that we thought we would never do. And then somebody said, well, preacher, that's great. I can think about the water and I can think about the baby formula. But I saw folks coming out of there with washing machines. Or TVs. What in the world are you going to do with a washing machine or a TV when there's not even any electricity? And then it dawned on me. I've known a few drug addicts in my life. It's not a very happy situation, but you know, if you're desperate for your fix, $5 for a washing machine will go a long way. Or $10 for a TV. Because again, we do whatever we got to do when we got to have it. And so I began to reflect on desperation, and I said, God, there's got to be a lesson in this somewhere, because something about desperation is either that motivates us in our spiritual life, or it is what is lacking that is keeping us from connecting with God at the level that He desires for us to be. And so I began to flip through Scripture, and I began to think about some particular stories that are great stories, many that you know, and things that mean a lot to me. But I think about blind Bartimaeus. Blind Bartimaeus was born blind. He was ridiculed. He was set aside. He was considered a sinner, or his parents were, because he was born that way, and that was a curse. And all he could do to even make a living was just sit on the roadside and beg, and that was even at the mercy of the government officials who said, we'll let you do this as long as you keep this cloak on you that says that you're an invalid, you're an outcast, and we've given you permission. And so that's the way he lived. And we don't know whether he had a family. We don't know whether he had any children. We don't know who he was having to provide for. But we do know that when he heard that Jesus was going to pass by, something happened in his spirit. Because Bartimaeus had that feeling. He said, I've been blind long enough. And I'm tired of this. I'm tired of what it's brought on me. I'm tired of the life I'm living. And he heard about Jesus before he ever met him. He heard he was a miracle worker. He heard he was someone that was setting captives free. And when he literally heard Jesus coming down the road, it says he began to shout, Jesus! And he began to shout, and says the louder he shouted, the more the religious people got nervous because he was embarrassing them. Why would this great man of God be interested in an old blind beggar? But nevertheless, it says the more they tried to stop him, the louder he got, because he said, I got to have something. And so when Jesus heard his cry, And it was because he heard him, because you realize the blind beggar couldn't have been out there in the forefront with all the crowd that was gathering around Jesus. But when Jesus heard his cry, he called for that man to be brought to him. And he stood the blind man right in front of him. And he said to him, "Sir, what do you want?" And I love that, because we always focus so much on what do you need. Jesus knew what he needed. He could look in his eyes and tell he was blind. I mean, they were all glazed over. There was all that funny-looking stuff that collects on people's eyes when they're blind. Jesus could tell what he needed, but he said, "What do you want? What do you want me to do for you?" And Bartimaeus said, "Oh, Rabbi, I just want to see." The desperation of his heart caused him to shout, caused him to do the unthinkable, caused him to go beyond the expected, caused him to even embarrass himself and others. But he said, "I don't care, because I'm tired of this and I want to see." And the master said, "What do you want?" He said, "I want to see." "Well, go your way. Your faith has made you well." Just like that, it was done. He was healed. He could see. But you notice there was even a deeper desperation in Bartimaeus, because it wasn't only that he get his eyesight so he could go do what he wanted to do. It says that when the master said, "Go your way," he came the other way and he followed Jesus down the road. Because something inside of him was longing for even more than